Welcome to the Reviews Without Remorse podcast with Joe and Dave. Be warned, the discussions in this podcast may contain detailed spoilers. For spoiler-free reviews, be sure to check out our show on YouTube. Enter at your own risk and enjoy the show.
Greetings, my friend. I am the King of Wakanda. I meant the Prince of Zamunda. Sorry about my accent. It goes in and out, but that's kind of part of the movie. With me is my trusty sidekick, who loves to call me the sweat from a baboon's balls. But what do you know from funny, you bastard? And this is Reviews Without Remorse, episode number 179. And in this episode, JJ Abrams is going to helm a new Superman project. Why is this one getting an undue amount of attention? We'll talk about it. The chapter card names, as Zack Snyder calls them, have been revealed for the Snyder Cut of Justice League. What does it say about the new project? Dave will shed some light. And then we return to the land of Zamunda and then Queens, New York, as Dave and I discuss 1988's Coming to America. What's up, my brother?
That was a brilliant opening, sir. What up, indeed. I am doing good. How are you doing?
I am very good. And kind of enjoying this new series. It's only a 2-part series, and we're just starting we're starting our first one, which is going to lead to next week's new one, which I don't think a lot of people anticipated, but here we are. Mm-hmm. Hesitant about next week, but feeling good about this week.
Yeah, I agree. I 100% agree. And by the way, I want to throw this out here. I apologize. I completely miscounted. Originally, we were supposed to start with Once Upon a Time in America to make it like an America trilogy. But then I realized I completely messed up the calendar and decided, well, you know what? A 4-hour movie is hard to watch anyway. So let's just cut Once Upon a Time in America and just start right with Coming to America.
Exactly. I literally was wondering when I was going to find time to sit down for a 4-hour epic. So I'm kind of glad we did that. But we definitely might get back to it at some point. In fact, I'm pretty sure the Mafia films are coming up soon. So who knows?
Yes, indeed. But let's enough with the preamble. Let's get to it.
Wow, first day of my internship at the Daily Planet.
Oh, working at the Daily Planet is great. Mr. Kent's really nice and Miss Lane gets all the scoops. And if I ever get in hot water, I can call Superman on my signal watch.
Good one, Jimmy.
It's true.
No way.
I'll prove it, rookie. Superman will catch me before I even hit the ground.
Is this your signal watch?
What an incredibly racist move. In the mid-70s, the script for the movie Alien was being passed around Hollywood and was looking for people to fill the cast. Do you want to know something that was unique about the casting notes for Alien? The original Alien, the Ridley Scott Alien from 1979? Do you want to know what was amazing about them? The description of the characters talked age and characterization. They never mentioned race. They never mentioned sex, which is why we wound up with Sigourney Weaver as Ripley, because the writer had originally envisioned Ripley as being a man, and it was Ridley Scott who said, no, you know what? Let's make it gender neutral and race neutral, and we just cast the best people for this part. I cannot believe that nearly 50 years later, we have to deal with this racist crap. Why is it only a black Superman? Why aren't you opening it even wider? Why aren't you making it potentially an Asian Superman or a Middle Eastern Superman? Why limit yourself to one race? Is this choice any different than just simply saying, oh no, this is for a white actor? So I call this whole idea of doing a black Superman movie simply as a black Superman movie racist, not because I give a flying flute about if Superman is black or Middle Eastern or Asian. I don't care about that. But my thing is, if you're going to do this type of signaling to say, look how progressive and forward we are, why stop at a single race? Why not open it up to all races? That's what's got me pissed off about this thing. I bet you weren't expecting me to say that, were you?
No, I guess I was not. I really was kind of wondering how you were going to go with this. And that is an interesting take. I'll tell you what, I'll even outshock you. I might even kind of disagree to a small extent.
Ooh, continue. I'm looking forward to this debate then.
Well, simply that, I mean, put it this way. If you're going to say how racist, how dare you put a black person in there, somebody else is going to turn around and say, how racist, how did you not have a problem putting a white person in there? I kind of don't mind when people experiment with different things. I've sort of said this before about a lot of similar projects. Look, if you want to put a different spin on it, fine. We have a female Sherlock Holmes series floating around. Never saw it, but I mean, I know it exists. It's that part of it is kind of okay. I would like to say this. My partner Dave tries desperately to avoid topics that have a political connotation, and I completely back him on that. My only response to that is that it is getting so incredibly hard to separate out the politics from the entertainment that we'd much rather be discussing. It's kind of just getting sort of Looney Tunes how that's happening. There are certain things that we have not addressed because they quite frankly, when you sort through them, they're nothing but politics. And really, it's not an entertainment story. But again, it's getting increasingly hard to separate that out. We'd much rather be an escape from real life and talk about the entertainment that we enjoy so much. With that said, again, it is hard not to sort of talk about that as you talk about this. My problem with it, beside the fact that JJ Abrams is a hack, my biggest problem with it is the writer. Is a fella named I'm going to ruin his name.
Ta-Nehisi Coates.
Ta-Nehisi Coates, thank you.
Yes.
Depending on what circles you might know him from being the writer of certain Black Panther comics. In other circles, you might know him as somebody who is an extreme hard left-wing activist, and I don't think he would disagree with that. I don't think I'm disparaging anybody by saying that. In my humble opinion, he has said things in the past that have been disgusting. I won't even get into it. Just think back to September of 2001. He made comments that were pretty despicable. So that's that's how it's that's how this project is going to be tainted for me. And with that said, I have no interest in it. And that's kind of all I got about it. I otherwise I feel like, okay, it's just another Superman project. I have no idea how it relates to the current DCEU. I guess it's probably safe to say that the DCEU is really no more, and they're just kind of going to do what they please. I don't really see how Wonder Woman fits into what has already been written, the most recent Wonder Woman 84. We've already had the Joker, which just doesn't fit anywhere. So who the hell knows what's going on with that? So, and I am sort of sad to see that they're doing this instead of doing another project with Henry Cavill, because I think he's pretty good in that role. Not great, but pretty good. So, that's all I got.
Yeah, I'm looking up about this person's politics, and yeah, he's a bit out there. I'd love to know the context of Menace of Nature about the 9/11 responders. That feels weird, but you know what? We're not going to go into politics here. That aside, my thing is, I just want a good Superman story. I really, really don't give a flying flute who tells it. I just want it to be a good Superman story. And right now, when you open up, to me at least, when you open up with limiting things down into a single race, that just tells me that you're not looking at a story, you're looking at an agenda. And when you're thinking of an agenda first and story second, it's not going to come out very well. And as you said, JJ Abrams is a hack. So, yeah. I have zero hope in this thing.
Sure. Yeah, and you're nailing it too. I mean, honestly, because of how they're tackling this. Well, I should preface and say, I'm hearing now that there was a storyline somewhere with a black Superman whose name was Colin Ellis, a take on Kal-El. I don't know anything about it, so maybe that's a thing. Maybe it's good. I don't know, but it does sort of feel like experiments we've seen in the past where they take existing properties and they say, let's redo this with an all black cast, or let's redo this with an all female cast. And then it becomes about, it becomes about the mission rather than the story. And I literally cannot think of one of those cases where I thought they did a good job with it. The art, again, is secondary to the underlying social message. So yeah, I will also even say I'll be shocked if this actually happens. I sort of feel like this is probably the kind of thing that gets a lot of bluster and headlines. I'll be surprised if this actually makes it all the way to the screen, because I sort of feel like I don't, if this is going to happen the way it sounds like it's going to happen, for the reasons we said, I don't see a lot of people going to see this, and I think the powers that be will realize this. So I kind of wonder if this will go the way of Nicolas Cage's Superman, frankly.
Who knows? I will say this much: you're talking about Calvin Ellis, and I feel like this particular project is bet hedging. Like, if it turns out that Snacks, what's a snack? If it turns out that Zack Snyder's Justice League is huge, like does really, really well, gets great reviews and stuff like that, they may rethink this plan.
Yeah.
So it's really all dependent. Well, it's really all dependent, kind of, sort of, on our next story.
I spent a lot of time trying to divide us. I need to bring us together and make this right.
Chapter 1. Don't count on it, Batman. Excuse me. Let me rephrase that. He lists it as parts. Not chapters, parts. Part 1. Don't count on it, Batman. Part 2. The Age of Heroes. Part 3. Beloved Mother, Beloved Son. Part 4, Change Machine. Part 5, All the King's Horses. Part 6, Something Darker. So, basically, we have 6 movies. That's how I'm taking it. This 4-hour movie is basically 6 little mini movies cut up into these little sections. Don't count on it, Batman. I mean, who knows who says that? Could be the Joker, could be anybody. Age of Heroes, Beloved Mother, Beloved Son. I'm sure that's with regards to Martha Kent. It's got to be, because Martha was made such a big deal in Batman v Superman. Change Machine. Now, Change Machine is interesting. Change Machine is the name that Cyrus Stone gave to the Mother Box before they were known to be called as Mother Boxes. So my guess is Part 4 is going to be the origin of Cyborg, which we never got. We never got that in the Joss Whedon cut. And there's a meme that goes around when somebody makes a suggestion about something really, really cool. They show a scene from Avengers Endgame. The scene in where Hawkeye says, "Don't do that. Don't give me hope." I gotta tell you, weirdly, as badly as I've been slamming on this, these little part titles kind of gave me hope.
I've been telling you.
I don't want to hope.
Well, again, you have to temper your expectations. Again, like I said, I kind of feel like this project will be enjoyable partly because it'll be far better than the Whedon version that we saw, and B, kind of just give you a deeper insight to the car wreck that we got. I want to see them inside the mind of madness. It could just be an exercise into watching the craziest thing you've ever seen. Like I said, I've been very anxious for this. Honestly, I'm probably more anxious for this than any of the other DC projects that are going around, and that includes the new Batman. It includes, I mean, honestly, I really can't think of anything else that really piques my interest the way this one does.
I got to say, I'm with you on that. I'm finally on board. I have no idea. I don't know. I'm like in shock over feeling it.
Yeah, and probably just because again, it's more. I mean, when you go to a Marvel movie, when you went into Endgame, you were walking into something that was great. This one has a feel of the unknown. I really don't know what I'm walking into with this, and I kind of find that to be almost compelling. More exciting. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. You know what? I'll give you that. Here's hoping, man. You know what? We'll be reviewing it in 2 weeks.
Once upon a time, in a faraway kingdom, lived a handsome prince. He was attended by devoted servants.
Do you think perhaps just once I might use the bathroom by myself?
Most amusing, sir.
Wipers!
And engaged by royal decree.
Why? Why can't I find my own wife?
We've gone to a great deal of trouble to select for you a very fine wife.
I want a woman that's going to arouse my intellect as well as my loins.
An extremely pampered African prince travels to Queens, New York, and goes undercover to find a wife that he can respect for her intelligence and strong will. Written by David Sheffield and Barry W. Blaustein, based on a story by Eddie Murphy, not credited, kind of sort of based on a story by Art Buchwald, but we'll get into that. Directed by John Landis. Oh, say, can you see I'm coming to America, America. What a silly, fun film. That's my opening statement. You may take it.
Yeah, listen, I'll preface by saying this, I because we were going to review this one, I sort of left my ear open to other review shows that were talking about this one, and I listened to one that I was pretty surprised kind of ran it down a little bit. They found a lot of problems with this film, pacing, just that they thought parts were not funny, et cetera, et cetera. And I remember kind of listening, kind of going like, wow, is that the same movie I remember? And this was before I sat down to rewatch it, and I was borderline trepidatious, thinking like, geez, maybe I remember this movie better than it was. I mean, I feel like this is one of those movies that's on TV pretty regularly. Mm-hmm. And I thought maybe I just sort of keep coming in at the funny parts, and maybe if I go back and sit and watch it from the beginning all the way through, it won't be quite as good. Well, sure enough, I sat and watched it last night finally, and loved the hell out of it. I was like, what the heck? How could you disparage this film? I kind of frankly feel like this is probably I can't think of a better example of Eddie Murphy at the top of his game. I mean, clearly, and I'm including, I mean, obviously before this, we had 48 Hours, we had Trading Places. I believe we had both the first two Beverly Hills Cop films. So he was obviously on his rise. And I kind of look at this one and I say, this is probably, again, I'm not saying I'd rather watch this than those films, but I mean, this was an Eddie Murphy project. Like he created the story, and I saw you hinting at well, maybe not, but we'll talk about it. But I sort of feel like this is purely an Eddie Murphy vehicle, and I kind of feel like after this, I mean, it was a little bit of a down, for a little while. We had The Golden Child, Boomerang, things like that. Nothing really kind of matched the epic heights that this one hit. I would probably say if there was one, a bounce back that he has later, it would probably be The Nutty Professor, but that was certainly a one-time thing, because even the second one of those just went real down real quickly. But Yeah, I mean, I gotta say, this is probably, if I'm Eddie Murphy, this is the one that probably sits on top of my resume, and I probably would take the most pride in this one. It's the first time we see Eddie Murphy doing the makeup, where he starts playing numerous other characters, and I kind of love how he does that, because none of those other characters detract from the main story. Like they don't distract in a way. Like I kind of feel like he so successfully does those other characters as other characters that you kind of don't confuse at all what's happening in the main story. And yeah, I honestly think this is in some ways a perfect comedy. I mean, again, I wouldn't call it a groundbreaking comedy like I would call others, but I really do feel like this is Eddie Murphy at the top of his game. It's not perfect. There are things that probably could have been tweaked here and there just slightly. But yeah, I think this is pretty much a home run.
You know what? I completely agree. Here I was being glib about your, the fun, silly thing. And here you go off on this wonderfully poetic little, I won't say tirade, but rant of sorts about just how much fun this flick is. I feel like, I mean, granted, the story, the subtext of this whole story is kind of sort of was personal to Eddie Murphy at the time, because at the time he was kind of the king of the world, so to speak. And I don't think he was married or anything like that, but I think this was almost like him projecting his existential crisis of, well, I'm this big person. How am I ever supposed to find somebody that I can truly, love and be with? And it's a weirdly touching story for him to have to tell. I mean, he could have done pretty much anything at that point. I mean, he was riding on the top of the world. He had 48 Hours, Trading Places, Beverly Hills Cop 2 to a lesser extent. And then, all of his stand-up stuff, he was really riding high. And this was kind of like a reset of sorts, to take the smugness, because in some way, shape, or form, each of the characters he plays has a little level of smugness to him. This was a very genuine performance when he was playing Akeem, not somebody like who thought too much of themselves, but, was introspective and was curious and was, just taking joy from life. I mean, such like positive character traits as opposed to like, the questionable, anti-heroes and stuff and, and everything of his previous characters. I found the story to be a compelling one. I mean, it's the oldest story in the book, but it's still it was still nicely done. And I felt like it earned its progress. Perfect? No, of course not. It's not a perfect movie by any stretch of the imagination. But what is wrong? You know what? Let me put it to you this way: to use semi-vernacular based on the movie. What is wrong every once in a while with having a Big Mac? They're pretty damn satisfying. You don't make a habit of eating Big Macs because too much of them could definitely be, overdo it. But, every once in a while, every couple of months or so, I will grab myself a Big Mac and be like, man, that sauce, it's tasty. It's reliable. You get the fries with it and everything like that. And what is wrong with why do we have to overanalyze things? He's not attempting to do art. This was an attempt to entertain. Why else do you think he was such a maniac with all the different parts, with that amazing makeup effects that Rob Bottin did for him throughout the movie? I mean, what more are you looking for in this movie? Are you trying to find the secret of life? Are you looking for some kind of, subtext? Who the hell can complain about this movie with a serious face? As cinema art, sure, but go ahead.
Nothing. I just wanted to interject. I think Rick Baker was responsible for a lot of the makeup effects as well.
But
I think I'll actually even take issue. Yeah. But I think I will actually take some issue with what you're saying, because I would even argue that this, I think it would be kind of dismissive to sort of call this a Big Mac. I kind of feel like when I think of, comedies and I think of like, Adam Sandler movies, I kind of like those are the Big Macs or the junk food of
those
comedy.
are Doritos. Those are Doritos.
Right. That's a gas station burrito.
Yeah. But please continue. Yes.
I kind of find this film to be a perfectly respectable film. I sort of feel like it has. I'm trying to I'm trying to think of like a bigger like. I'll even compare it to things like Ghostbusters, maybe Trading Places, where I kind of feel like these are big developed films. Like maybe a good example of what I'm talking about is like a movie like Step Brothers. You know, Step Brothers to me, the first half of that film, if that's on, I watch it, I laugh hysterically, right? I mean, it is just I'm like falling over laughing. That's how good the first half of that film is. At the second you hit the halfway mark and you feel the plot kick in, I literally just shut it off. The movie's over for me. That's it. So, meaning I'm watching like just sort of like skit comedy of two guys acting like knuckleheads, acting like little kids. For me, it's really funny, but the film itself to me is just totally useless and broken. It's just a vehicle to get these guys to do funny things, but then that's it. As far as I'm concerned, there's no story. Like there's absolutely no point past, again, like the halfway. Once they get into that, I just turn off. But I watch Coming to America from beginning to end, and I feel like every point of this film I feel like is working. I mean, I think the setup is perfectly done. You get just enough set up to get the story moving. You go to America, you know, antics ensue, but you're following along in the process. And it does sort of, you know, I'm following the story, and there's no point where it loses me. I will say, again, when we start kind of getting into things that maybe could have been tightened up a little bit here and there, there's not a lot, but I do feel that there's probably moments where I would probably say there's two. My problems with the film fall under two categories. One is that this looks and feels very much like an Eddie Murphy ego project. You know, this is kind of Eddie Murphy's ego on full display, and I don't have a problem with that per se. But again, it is distracting at moments where we're kind of we stop with the ha-has for a little bit so we could kind of focus on Eddie Murphy being a serious actor and trying to, and he's very handsome and look whatever. And probably as a part of this, my other complaint, which could just be another way of saying my first complaint, when we kind of get into the romance part of it, I get it. Like I've heard people say, well, this is not really romantic comedy. It's really just a comedy with some romance. And I'm like, yeah, exactly. Boom, done. I don't want it to be a rom-com. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't want wacky rom-com type silliness. I want, you know, just a comedy that has some heart to it. And I sort of feel like that's pretty much what this does successfully. Again, though, once you start to get into, I feel like once you get to the part where the king shows up, he talks to Lisa. Now we got to run around the city. You know, we have to sort of wedge in like a little Woody Allen-ish where he's chasing her through the city and they have a talk on the train. It's fine, but it's just a kind of a little overdone. Like I get it. You have to sort of have the all is lost moment so we can have a happy ending. But it's laid on real thick, you know, like it really is sort of, you know, they're spreading that peanut butter on real thick, and it could be a little much, and maybe we didn't need that much of it. And then I sort of feel like once all is lost, you sort of jump cut to the end, and everybody's happy.
So he traveled across the sea to the land of opportunity, which is where the fairy tale ends and our story begins.
Behold, Simi, life, real life, a thing that we have been denied for far too long.
I will agree that the little rushed ending is a bit abrupt, not earned. I really felt, even as I was watching, I was like, oh yeah, that's right, the happy ending, right. I didn't feel it was very earned. I mean, but, you know, it was a crowd-pleasing moment, which, honestly, you know, I know you took umbrage with my use of the word Big Mac, which, you know, was just kind of made up, just a play on the whole McDonald's thing from the movie. But you know what? You shouldn't diss you shouldn't diss the idea of it being a Big Mac. There's nothing wrong with, a perfectly palatable, quick something or other. And in a weird way, you kind of proved my point that it is kind of sort of empty calories. It's a fun movie. It's an enjoyable movie, and you get wrapped up in it. But when you break it down to brass tacks, it's got its flaws, and that's okay though. There's I feel like there's too much pressure on the part of both reviewers, society, etc., to that things have to be absolutely positively perfect, that there can't be a hair out of place, that every single dot on the screen needs to be in exactly the right moment, which is ironic, me defending this movie for that, considering what my Who Asks You is, spoiler alert, but sometimes it is the case. I liken when a movie casts its spell on you as magic, and this movie kind of does that, even with its shortcomings. If you sit and think about this movie enough, oh, sure, it's got its issues, but at the time, you're kind of just along for the ride. It's a nice, gentle little roller coaster. The impetus of this movie, one of the things that I will always remember about this movie, aside from some things that we'll get into, is the infamous exposure of Hollywood accounting. This is the movie that exposed Hollywood accounting. The columnist and humorist, as he liked to call himself, Art Buchwald, actually wrote a screenplay and submitted to Paramount and a similar storyline. Only it wasn't a happy ending. It was a story about a person who was, he was a prince, but he moved to America and he wound up working in lowly jobs and stuff like that. It was a much more dour take on it. Anyway, after the movie made over $350 million at the box office, he sued, he won, and in the auditing of the movie, this was where it was first exposed how Hollywood accounting works. That even though the movie only cost $36 million at the time to make and made $350 million worldwide, it was considered a loss. It was considered, a red,
Really?
net loss to. Oh yeah, absolutely. Then that's, like I said, if you ever want to, if there's one thing I'd like you to do, check out a book called Fatal Subtraction. Okay. It is literally a point-by-point explanation to the whole process and how they found out about how, even though this movie did so much, there was no money to be given to Art Buchwald. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there because it's kind of an interesting bit of trivia with regards to this movie. So in this movie, we have, Eddie Murphy, of course, and his best friend at the time, who seems to be coming back, Mr. Arsenio Hall, and James Earl Jones as the, King Jaffe Joffer. That man, I swear to God, that man. Another thing that this movie makes me remember, somebody took scenes from Star Wars and dubbed it with James Earl Jones voicing lines from Coming to America. So at some point there'd be like, there's Darth Vader going around. They even did the voice for the Darth Vader. It's like, I'm prepared to compensate you. It's like, that's another thing that this movie always makes me think of. It's also the first appearance of Cuba Gooding Jr. Bet you didn't know that.
Right. Yep.
Sitting in the barber chair with that big old
I didn't know
smile.
that it was his first, but it was, it was certainly the only, it was the first thing I ever noticed of him. So I'm not surprised.
And, of course, the ever-present John Amos and the wonderful cameo from Samuel L. Jackson, who, of course, had to say the MF word many times because that's Samuel L. Jackson. That's his thing. Why do you think it says it on his wallet?
That was that literally like his I don't think it was his first movie, but I think that might have really kind of kicked it off for him, especially just being Samuel L. Mother effing Jackson.
I mean, I know that MFR was definitely part of it. Well, let's take a look at his. I think it looks like School Days was like his first, like, really big movie, but he was also in a TV movie version of Uncle Tom's Cabin. He was in Ragtime. Yeah, This was probably like the big first one. And then after that was, Do the Right Thing. I think that was really his breakout role, was in Do the Right Thing as the DJ. Because, I mean, for God's sakes, remember the movie Sea of Love with Al Pacino? He's credited as Black Guy.
Jeez.
Yeah.
That's funny.
And then, but probably then he was in More Better Blues, and then he was Stax Edwards in Goodfellas. But we're not here to talk about Samuel L. Jackson. We're supposed to be talking about Coming to America.
But you're I mean, you're hitting on a great point that this film. I mean, the cast of this film is stellar.
Mm-hmm.
I really think that they really did cast this film pretty perfectly. Frankly, I mean, first of all, yes, James Earl Jones as the king. I mean, can you picture a better? I can't imagine anyone else in this role. And quite frankly, I sort of feel like that's probably why he goes on to play the lion, or the king and the Lion King.
Yes. And funnily enough, Madge Sinclair does go on to play his wife, Mufasa's wife. I forget her character's name, though. Sorry about that. So, unfortunately. Yeah, I know. Talk about stunt casting. But now this is where we get into an interesting situation, though. I have to, and I hate doing this because half the reason that we're even doing this is because they are making a sequel coming number 2, America. God, I can't stand that. So the premise is that Akeem fooled around before he found Lisa. Okay. And he fooled around with a 21-year-old Leslie Jones because, according to her biography, she was born in 1967, so she would have been 21 when this movie came out. And they had a kid, and the kid is 30, and now the kid is like 30 years old or something like that, or 30 or 32, whatever the case may be. There is a part of me that I don't know how they're going to do it, but I kind of have an issue with this. I kind of feel like the sequel is going to undercut the charm and the simplicity and the growth nature of the character of Akeem and, and all that, everything like that. I kind of feel like the sequel is going to undercut it a little bit. I mean, you tell me, I've just laid out to you what it is I see. What is your feelings? Knowing that we have yes, go on.
Yeah, I'm with you, and it's funny. I feel like normally I'd be kind of hesitant to talk about it because I'd be thinking, no, we should wait until next week. But I have a hunch we're gonna have so much to talk about next week from the sequel that we might as well carve up the premise a little bit here, and as I watched it last night, it was kind of in my mind.
Yeah.
In fact, there's a specific line when they're working in the McDowell's, and Semi says to Eddie Murphy, he says, "Do you realize I have not had any sex since I've been here, and it's been like 2 weeks or something like that," and and it's a kind of just a throwaway line. But when you're rewatching it in the context of the next one, it's like, okay, well, yeah, that makes perfect sense that Semi would not have, because how would he had any opportunity? I mean, we've literally been following these characters perfectly closely. There's no like crossfades where just time goes by. I mean, we're pretty much with them every minute of their experience when they're here. I mean, the part when, like, they literally, I'm pretty sure it goes right from, like, they go into the barbershop. The barber cuts off Eddie Murphy's hair. He cuts off the big long braid.
Yeah.
And Semi says, "Okay, I think you're ready to find your queen." And they cut to them walking through a bar. I mean, there's still, we've literally seen every change of clothes. You know what I mean? Like they arrived wearing their suits and their princely wardrobe, whatever you want to call it.
Which everybody in the Queens is now wearing. Yes.
Right. Right. That gets stolen. They're all running around wearing their clothes. So all of a sudden they're wearing jeans and Mets jackets and Mets hats or whatever. And that pretty much stays with them until they're in the barbershop. They cut his hair off. Then, okay, let's go find your queen. Then they they cut to where they do that scene in the nightclub. They're in the bar. They're kind of wearing their Cosby sweaters, which were popular in the late 80s.
Yes.
You know, and they do that whole montage of all the crazy women.
I've got a secret. I worship the devil.
See, that's the problem. I can't find a man that can satisfy me. Now, some guys go an hour, hour and a half. That's it. A man's got to put in overtime for me to get off.
I'm not interested in a man unless he drives a BMW.
Yeah, well, you know, baby, I'm almost single. My husband's on death row.
This is the first date Teresa and I have been on since the doctor separated us.
I'm into the group thing.
I was Joan of Arc in my former life.
My name is Peaches, and I'm the best. All the DJs want to feel my breast.
I hope you don't mind me coming over and sitting down, but I've been watching you all evening, and I want to tear you apart. And your friend, too.
I worship the devil.
Yeah, it was cute and funny. But they literally cut from that to they're walking home and they see the barber come out of the barbershop and they say, where do you find nice girls? Oh, you got to go to church. You got to go wherever. You got to go where I'm going. So, I mean, like, this is literally, it looks like this is even the same night that at the end of the night, they end up at this, which, I mean, it's kind of a long night. I mean, who goes to a nightclub and then, you know, goes to a function afterwards? But, I mean, but that's how they filmed it.
Right.
So, right. So he meets Lisa right from there. So unless he ran into the bathroom with one of the women in the nightclub, which he just complained later, you know, they all seem to be crazy. Right. I don't see how this happens. I don't see how. I mean, I kind of feel like if this was mildly more realistic, it would have been maybe Semi who had a kid who I could have much easily seen sneak off or do something. I don't know. But yeah, I'm with you. Having rewatched the first one, I feel like the premise of the second one is less and less likely.
Yeah, and I hate to bring it up, but it, you know, like I said, it's kind of like, remember how I said that it's weird how now that we've watched Cobra Kai, you almost want to go back to the old Karate Kid movies, and you realize just maybe Cobra Kai has made the original movies. I mean, heck, when the next season of Cobra Kai comes out, my hope is that we do a lead up by doing a review of the 3 Karate Kid movies. And yes, I said the 3 Karate Kid movies because there's only 3 Karate Kid movies.
Thank you.
But my point is, yes, it does inform. It does inform on my opinion for this movie. And I'm not going to, detract from it, but it was glaring to me as I was watching it. It was very difficult for me to let go, knowing what the next movie is going to be about, even though we haven't seen it yet. And a part of me kind of feels bad for this movie for dumping on it, prejudging it, so to speak, based on a movie that I haven't even watched yet. I feel like so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pin this right now. It needs to be said, just like speaking about the Art Buchwald thing needs to be said, because I'd like people to check out that book, Fatal Subtraction. I feel this needs to be said because this is the context of its time. But I'm going to put a pin on it for now. And the conclusion of this conversation will be next week, because maybe there will be a perfectly valid explanation that they throw in there. I am doubtful, but maybe there will be. One never knows. And they brought back most of the cast too. So
yes, they did. You see, and it's kind of well, I'll say 2 things. One is, and this is just a general kind of, I don't have a lot of hope for next week. I'm hoping that it will be at best just a complete shut your brain off, have fun revisiting the first film, have a couple chuckles. That's it. Don't put too much thought into it. I mean, they from the commercials I've seen, which look kind of fun in terms of just pure fan service. I mean, basically, it's almost like they're just rehashing every scene of the movie. They go into the same barbershop, the same guys, the exact same guys are sitting there. Nothing has changed, even the slightest little bit. Everybody else makes a cameo. I mean, it's every character they did shows up again. Like, I mean, these guys, like the barbershop guys, they were ancient in the first one. I mean, these were old guys.
And here we are 30 years later.
30 years later, and they look exactly the same, except for maybe just the slightest bit of aging that Eddie Murphy's actually done in real life under the latex. So, yeah. Anyway, I don't have tremendous hopes for next week. I'm hoping it'll just be again just kind of what we said before, junk food and just good for a couple chuckles. The other point that you hit on, and I wanted to comment on, it really is an interesting phenomenon that we are getting. I've noticed in recent years sequels that do seem to have an effect on the films which came before them. Now, obviously, if we see this film next week, it really should have, again, obviously, no effect on the quality of this film. Yet somehow our actual enjoyment of the film might literally change because of how good or how bad the sequel could be. I mean, I'm remembering Creed 2, right? Now, Creed 2, if you remember, was the son of Apollo Creed, who we met in the first Creed, fighting the son of Drago, right? Now, honestly, this film was so well done that I said to myself, it actually does sort of put Rocky IV in a better light, you know?
We both agreed to that, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I can think of other films that sort of did like this sort of a mild retcon of what came prior. So yeah, I'll just say it is kind of a funny thing. I mean, it's like I said, it can't change the quality of this film just by nature alone. Yet somehow in our minds, that phenomenon does exist. So yeah, I don't know. I am, like you said, I'm a little nervous for next week. I'm trying to just prepare myself again for something that is lighthearted, fun, really doesn't mean anything in the big scheme of things. And it's just good for a couple chuckles. And I'll probably just like it because I'm revisiting characters that I've seen before. But again, story-wise, it could be shockingly bad. I'll just say that.
It could be. Or it could be surprisingly good. Who knows? It's a 50-50 shot.
Maybe because I'm preparing myself for so little, it could be a pleasant surprise. But who knows?
I guess that's kind of sort of with me with Justice League. You know, I'm expecting damn little that when the chapter cards came out, I was kind of like, well, I don't know now.
There you go.
It's hard to say. I do wish. The thing is like, to me, Cobra Kai is an anomaly. Okay. I don't think you can. I think there comes a point where a story has a beginning, middle, and end, and that's it. And I feel like the success and the enjoyment that we get out of Cobra Kai is truly an anomaly. I don't get how that show is working with me. I don't get it, but it is. And to me, it's improving my view of the original movies because it's adding an extra layer of context and subtlety that I didn't find originally, because at the time it was just a damn Karate Kid. I mean, what more was there to it? With Coming to America, the story itself is so, straightforward that I feel like any deviation from that original story is going to be detrimental to the original story. But we won't know. We won't know until next week. So, I mean, I really feel like I'm beating a dead horse at this point. The bottom line with this movie is even all these years later, it's still funny. It still has some nice, genuine, funny moments, including my 4-year consideration, which we'll get to. There is nothing wrong with this movie, and I feel like anybody that complains about what a terrible movie this is, I kind of feel like you don't have a sense of humor, or you just take life too serious. For God's sakes, just enjoy.
Yeah.
Just enjoy.
What's your joke that I love so much? Show me on the doll where it hurt you.
Exactly.
I feel like a complete idiot.
Have either of you ever had any fast food work experience before?
Certainly not.
This will be our first job in the United States. I am Akeem.
It's nice to meet you, Akeem.
I have recently been placed in charge of garbage.
That's good to know.
Oh my goodness, it is you! Greetings, Your Highness!
Who was that?
Eddie Murphy,
Just the man I met in the restroom.
Arsenio Hall, in a comedy fable of royal romance.
When I look at these contestants for the Miss Black Awareness pageant, I feel good.
Apparently, these are the best women Queens has to offer. Pick one and let's go home. I want to tear you apart. And your friend, too.
Hey, but how much did you like it, Joe? What kind of score would you like to give it, Joe? Or would you like me to give the score first?
You can go first.
All right. There is absolutely nothing but fun to be had in this movie. Okay? Is it perfect? Of course not. But who cares? It's just a fun little romp flick. It has some great little moments, some wild special effects. Makeup effects. There's, moderate acting. There doesn't need to be that much. It just needs to tell a simple, cute little tale. It needs to make you believe that these characters, are inhabiting this world. I liked so much of the little touches. I liked the idea of Lisa's father, cribbing from a frickin' McDonald's operations book. I love that little world, the scene where he asks the parents to stand up and the little Jerry curl stains are on the back of the couch and stuff like that. There's a lot of little subtlety in this movie that just is so much fun and so enjoyable. It doesn't really go out of its way to point to the joke and say, see, laugh. There's that, like little moments, like in the beginning where he has, his chosen bride bark, and he just kind of looks at the screen like, are you kidding me? I mean, you gotta love something like that. So I gave this movie an 8. There is nothing wrong with just having a nice popcorn, fun little moment in a movie. And this is one of those type of movies. It was a joy to watch, with all the bleakness going on. As much as I'm loving WandaVision, holy smokes, does that look like it's heading towards a really, really emotional bad end for the story? It's nice to have something that was just fun, simple entertainment where, you're rooting for the good guys to come through, and they do, and it's just nice to have. 8 is a solid number for this movie.
I will echo those sentiments. I also am going to give it an 8. I was tempted to go higher, and I think I kind of caught myself at the last minute saying, okay, look, I think this is probably the height of Eddie Murphy's career, frankly. But it's still just a fun comedy, again, not groundbreaking like other comedies that we could talk about. So yeah, I think an 8 is perfectly fair. Again, it's not without flaw, but I feel like it delivers on all cylinders. I feel like this is a film, that again, it could have settled on its laurels, but rather than just sort of giving you the straightforward story, it's piling in a lot of stuff. I sort of feel like all of these, even all these characters that they sort of put in, there are moments in the story, right? I sort of would marvel when I would realize that in this scene alone, there's 3 Eddie Murphys, there's 3 different Arsenio Halls happening just in this scene alone. And they put the extra work into making that sort of work so flawlessly.
Yep.
I kind of had a moment where they, when James Earl Jones arrives in New York and he walked into the barbershop, he's talking to the barber, who's Eddie Murphy, and then sitting next to him, sort of fondling the lion skin, going, "What is that, velvet?" I was like, "Oh yeah, that's Eddie Murphy too." So it's like just this little nothing scene alone took a lot of work. So I really have to admire the film for kind of wanting to go the extra mile, throughout. So yeah, I'm giving it an 8. I want to sort of call it a high 8 because I really do appreciate it for what it is. And yeah, it's just great stuff.
Yep. And they didn't have to use CGI to do the split screens and stuff like that. They actually had to do that.
Yep.
They had to film it that way. So, yeah, absolutely extra credit for that as well. Agreed wholeheartedly, sir. Now, who asked you?
Sticking with the spirit of who asked you and what would we tweak to do better? There's a part of the film that I kind of always thought didn't really fit, to the point where I'm not even sure why it's even there. The whole, basically, at some point, Eddie Murphy buys her a pair of earrings that I don't know if it's literally worth $500,000, but that's sort of the number that gets thrown around. I don't know if if as it's mentioned that it was literally that expensive, or do people just sort of say that in an exaggerating way? But yeah, so she gets in the mail a set of earrings worth $500,000, right? I kind of feel like if something arrives in my mailbox that's $500,000, pretty much whatever I was talking about 5 minutes ago just got completely derailed and my life just changed, and I'm running this thing to the nearest either safe deposit box or what do you call it, pawn store to cash in. I mean, I don't care where it came from, I don't care who it's from, but yeah, I mean, and it's very sort of casually dismissed in the film, and
until he gets to the older lady on the subway at the end,
right? I mean, honestly, like he says it like from an admirer, not Daryl. Well, you could have sent flowers and said from an admirer, not Daryl. I kind of feel like, again, it's almost like the whole cast has to sort of pretend that this didn't happen. Because, I mean, again, that's $500,000 that just showed up. I'm sure the father probably is not even worth that much.
Yeah.
You know, like, as well as
it undercuts the main plot itself, which is looking for somebody who's not a money grubber. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. I mean, like, it's right. It literally does that. This even comes after there's a shot where you see her, I guess, just sort of coming back from a date. Daryl is dropping her off, so they're kissing in the parking lot, and the Louis Anderson character sort of makes a comment, girls only want guys with money. So then he buys earrings and sends them. Well, yeah, right. That literally completely undercuts the whole point of everything. So I don't know why it's there. I almost feel like the scene later when they're arguing in the subway, and she throws them at him and says, "Well, I know where these came from," and she throws it. And by the way, when he catches it, I keep watching. Right, like I keep looking at that scene, thinking they must have filmed it backwards. Like he must have thrown them, and they played it backwards to make the two just land in the palm of his hand. But then I watch it again, and go like, I don't think that's what they did. Maybe it could have just be that lucky. I don't know. Maybe 100 takes and it just worked. Anyway, they probably, at the very least, they probably connected the two so that he caught both of them, whatever. But anyway,
yeah,
getting a little off on a little dumb tangent. It's always sort of every time I watch that film, I always go, how did they do that? Anyway, so yeah, I almost feel like the only reason why that's even in the film is so they can have some sort of a visual cue like that she threw something back at him, you know, and whatever. So, but yeah, it does conflict with the whole point of the film. So I think it was, I get that they maybe needed something in there, but that wasn't it.
You know what? I'll grant you that. And I'll agree with you on that, because I always found that whole little subplot. I mean, I tell myself, well, she couldn't imagine that these would be real and that these would be worth as much money as they were. Because she wasn't at the door. She didn't see the guy standing there with the security guard next to her or anything like that. It was the sister that went. And, you know, the sister's a little bit, you know, I can buy her not questioning it or not even thinking that these things are even real or anything like that. But you're right. By the way she says, well, now I know where these came from, says that she at least suspects that they were very, very expensive, and she didn't even take the time to have them appraised. Excellent. Who asked you? Much better than mine, because mine is a nitpick on top of nitpicks. You ready for this one? Why do the crowns for Zamunda look like they were made with a bedazzling glue gun. Seriously, the minute I saw it,
they definitely didn't spend all the money on the. Yeah.
I could not unsee it.
I'm with you there. I noticed that as well. Once that was pointed out to me, suddenly it looked like you're right. The gold things are plastic, etc. I'm with you there.
Right up to the end at the wedding and everything like that. Even the prince had a freaking bedazzled crown, and I could not get past it. Every time it was on the screen, I was sniggering for the wrong reasons. No, I would have definitely made nicer crowns if I had my chance.
Well said. Well said.
I have a feeling our 4-year consideration is going to be pretty much the same thing.
Very possible. I could probably see it.
All right. Would you like me to go first, or would you
Who's
like
going first?
I'll take it.
You go first.
All right. I mean, you can't not say this. The first time I saw the movie, and at the end where they're in the closing credits, the little character starts telling himself, wait a minute. And the title card, Eddie Murphy, comes up. I remember the entire audience going, what? That's how good Rick Baker's makeup was in this flick. So, yeah. And even the part where the guy, Randy Watson, it's like I was watching the Randy Watson, sexual chocolate scene where he's singing and everything like that. And I was looking and I was like, man, they like completely changed Eddie Murphy's face. If it wasn't for the fact that this is an Eddie Murphy movie, I would not really know. That's how good Rick Baker's makeup effects are. And he is a runner-up for your consideration. And I'm going to agree that even what my final for your consideration is, it's personal. It has nothing to do with anything else. It didn't advance the plot in any way, shape, or form. But Don Amici and Ralph Bellamy showing up in that scene makes me giggle, made me laugh out loud the first time I see it, and still makes me laugh out loud. The Duke brothers cameo in this movie remains my favorite moment in the entire film. So yeah, that's for your consideration.
And that's a great one too. Both of those were spectacular. And it's funny you said that about when he shows up at the end and the title card said Eddie Murphy. Now that you mention it, yes, I had a similar experience. I think I watched it with some people, and I don't think I saw it in the theater, but once I rented it. I think I rented it with some friends, and we did the same exact thing where that happened, and we all just went, "What?" Like we couldn't believe that was him. And yes, the cameo with the two guys at the end, which begs the question: is there a Freddie Valentine running around somewhere that also exists in the same universe? I guess he must.
Yep. Eddie Murphy created the cinematic universe first with the Trading Places cinematic universe. That's what this is.
There you go. Absolutely. Mine is a little less interesting, a little less specific. I just wanted to sort of give it to the general cast and just say I thought the film was cast so perfectly, and I ironically, because Eddie Murphy and Arsenio Hall are playing so many other characters, you didn't even need that big of a cast. But certainly the two that stands out, the one that's just a grand slam is James Earl Jones as his father. I mean, that's just perfect casting, and again, that predates Lion King. So it really did sort of set a standard, and I think John Amos is sort of my second favorite as Lisa's father. And I also think I think Lisa is also perfectly cast. I think she's terrific. I mean, I like that she's more or less an unknown, so it kind of you sort of needed that for that character. But also, I kind of, as I look back now, it's like, oh yeah, Eric LaSalle as Daryl. I think that was one of his earliest things. But it's like now you look back and it's like, oh yeah, that was him. So yeah, I think the cast is pretty spectacular.
You know what? I'll agree. Absolutely, positively agree. I feel bad for Eric LaSalle. You know, his last part in anything has been he was the farmer in Logan. That was his last part in 2017.
Oh, right, yeah.
Where the hell has he been?
There you go. It's very true.
Coming to America.
Sir, I
I was wondering, did you happen to catch the professional football contest on television last night?
No, I didn't.
Oh, it was most exhilarating. The Giants of New York took on the Packers of Green Bay. And in the end, the Giants triumphed by kicking an oblong ball made of pigskin to a big H. It was a most ripping victory.
Son, you want to keep working here. Stay off the drugs.
Well, man, guess what? That ends it. That ends our review of Coming to America. Oh, but no, we have to go back to the well, ladies and gentlemen, because next week, Joe and I will be reviewing Coming number 2, America.
I'd say, again, as I'm saying to myself, I feel like there's been so many similar projects where we went back in time to revisit something, and for the most part, whether it's the Creed films or Cobra Kai, I mean, most of them have been, surprisingly good. So I really am kind of, I kind of almost go 80-20, 80% saying next week's going to be a disappointment to a 20%, maybe it'll be a pleasant surprise, but I kind of feel like it'll be interesting at the very least.
I hope so. I really, really hope so. This is going to be the oddest thing I'm ever going to say, but weirdly, I have more hope in Justice League than Coming number 2, America.
Same here.
Well, until then, sir, excellent time as always, my man.
Same here, my brother. This was a very pleasant one. I'm looking forward to talking about the next one, so I will see you here next week.
Thanks for listening to the Reviews Without Remorse podcast with Joe and Dave. Join us here every Thursday for a new episode, and be sure to check out the Reviews Without Remorse channel on YouTube for spoiler-free reviews of new releases. If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider becoming a Patreon. You can find our page on patreon.com/reviewswithoutremorse, one word. As little as $1 a month goes a long way. All clips in this podcast are for commentary and critique and is considered fair use. No copyright infringement is intended.
Wait, stop right there. Listen, stop right there a minute. Man goes into a restaurant. You listening? A man goes into a restaurant, he sits down, he's having a bowl of soup. He says to the waiter, come, taste the soup. Waiter says, is there something wrong with the soup? He says, taste the soup. He says, is there something wrong with the soup? Is the soup too hot? He says, will you taste the soup? It's wrong. Is the soup too cold? Will you just taste the soup? All right, I'll taste the soup. Where's the spoon? Aha. Aha. What do you know from funny, you bastard?